We are recording. Let me pull up the course and then I'll share my screen once that happens. This is going to be pretty much like the other um, meetings that we've had because I still have a lot of grading to do. So I don't have too much as far as feedback is concerned. So this is more going to be a little bit of a heads up regarding the upcoming module. So let's see here. Let me share my screen. I will say this, as usual, attendance words, right? So the first attendance word is going to be window, like the thing you look out of, a window. And Nancy, as usual, you could just email me, remind me that you were here on the meeting, and then I'll give you your extra credit. And anyone else who's watching this video, remember that you'll need to send the list of words. And then at the end, you also need to ask me one question regarding the information that I'm giving you in this meeting. Even if you think you know everything and you think you understood everything, ask me a question anyway, just to be sure. It also helps demonstrate that you were paying attention. Anyway, let's take a look here at Module 4 very quickly. The discussion, I still have a lot of grading to do. I'd say the biggest mistake I've seen so far is, and I just want to remind everybody again, just look at this, read this, read the introduction. That hopefully gets you in the right frame of mind. But when it comes to like, before you write your papers or your post, read this because it tells you exactly what you need to do, right? A lot of people did not define biodiversity, right? So, and if you're one of those people, just go do it. Go reply to your own post and say something like, "Oh, by the way, I'd like to add to my post and say here's the definition of biodiversity." So make sure you do that. And then obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but not only did you need to define it, but you also had to talk about how your idea impacts biodiversity. So, for example, just if you just say this is good for biodiversity, that's not really good enough, right? So you want to describe how, like, this is, good for biodiversity because it protects species, and the more species we have, the higher the biodiversity, something like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And of course, you need to explain why it's important, right? So again, this was originally supposed to be, or maybe it still is. Did I change this one? No, it's a letter to your legislator, right? So, if you were truly trying to sway your legislator, which I hope you will, not necessarily with what I'm telling you right now, just mean in general, hopefully as a college educated citizens, you become active in this. But anyway, when you write and try to sway your legislator, you don't want to just say, "Hey, I like that you're doing this. It's good for biodiversity. Thanks." Right? You want to explain, like, why is biodiversity important? So yeah, and again, also on my end, when it comes to grading this academic discussion, that helps demonstrate that you understand the concepts. And of course, as usual, when people are still messing this up, you have to properly use references. What do I mean by properly? If you don't know, click that and read it, right? So it's the same thing, same mistakes. I can't grade something unless you've properly used sources. And the links have to work, right? So some of the links have to work. And also, when I did mess this one up, so I'd like to call myself out on this. If I like deduct points because I say you didn't properly use references, but I messed up, let me know. I make mistakes. I have one of your classmates. I said, "Hey, I need the actual website, not the homepage or whatever, something like that." But anyway, then they send me a screenshot like, "This is the information that was in my post that came from this source." So, feel free to call me out. I don't take offense to it. Also, likewise, I hope you don't take offense when I call you out on your mistakes. This is the learning experience, right? It's okay to make mistakes. You learn from them. Anyway, that's it for the Module 4 discussion. Did you have any questions about it, Nancy? I just take the silence as a no questions. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I said no. Did you not hear me?
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Can you
No,
hear
I
me?
didn't hear it.
Okay.
I can now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No big deal. That's all right. All right. So in that case, we will move on to the lab. The lab was pretty straightforward. Not much to say about this. Actually, let me say one more thing about the discussions. And of course, I'm probably preaching the choir here because if you're watching this video or you're in the meeting, you're kind of probably on top of things. But I really want to make things easier for the students. I feel like my discussions are too challenging, and I'm not trying to make them challenging. So really, if you give me some feedback, here's my biggest concerns with discussions in general. So yes, I want to make them easier, but these are the things I need them to do. These discussions need the students need to be able to demonstrate some concepts from that particular module, right? So module 4, for example, last week, I needed you to write something that helps demonstrate that you understand those concepts, and you're putting those concepts to use instead of just memorizing stuff for an exam or a quiz. You're putting them to use. And my biggest thing with the sources, and I think that's where people probably get the most irritated with me. Well, first of all, like I've said many times throughout the semester, it's just good practice. If you shouldn't post facts, you shouldn't share facts unless you can back it up, right? So in your paper and in this academic discussions, you should be posting facts, right? So therefore, it's just good practice, right? And then beyond that, when it comes to just being practical, people are cheating a lot. People are using AI, and AI is notoriously bad at using sources. So if like if you ask it to use a source, it'll list some sources, but it'll often screw it up. So for example, if you post something and you have a fact and you say, according to this source, and you say something, and then I go to that source and it's not there, that's just a huge red flag for me. Like, where did you come up with that information? Right? Humans shouldn't be, that wouldn't be a mistake that you made. Like, you're not just going to magically come up with some information. I could see if maybe you misunderstood your source, but completely like giving me information that was nowhere to be found in your source, that's a huge red flag. So again, I just want some feedback. I could really use your help on how I can make these discussions easier, but yet still maintain what I want to do academically and what I want to do as far as preventing cheating, preventing the use of AI. And again, I'll say this one, maybe not last time, I'll probably say it again next week. I'm officially saying don't use AI. I really don't want you to. But if you're going to, then you better check each one of your sources. If it says, according to this source, right, and if it says it's going to be found in this source, it better be found in that source. And make sure every fact that you list in your paper has a source. If you just do those things, it should be very easy. Using AI would actually be harder because you'd have to take all that time to check your sources and make sure every fact in your paper is properly sourced, right? So again, just keep that in mind. Anyway, quiz, there's nothing to say about that. Obviously, if you meet me online and get feedback on the quiz, you can get up to a 5% boost to your grade, unless, of course, you got 100%, in which case, there's no feedback to give. Exam 2, same thing, right? If you meet me for feedback, you can get a 5% boost to the grade. But just like last exam, I think I'm going to probably open this up and let you guys retake it. And again, the retake will be open book. It'll be not timed. You can retake it as many times as you want. You'll just need to email me when you're done. Say, hey, I'm satisfied with my new grade. And then I'll go in and average your first grade and your last grade. For a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons, since I just had this conversation, I just talked about this. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because I do recognize that sometimes my labs are hard with the screenshots and all that. And I do recognize that my discussions are hard. And to help, I don't know, give back to you, I guess, kind of like an apology, but doing something about it, opening up these exams so you can improve your grade. So however I might be hurting your grades with the discussions and the labs, hopefully you can make up for that with the quizzes and the exams. But anyway, any questions about the quizzes or the exams before we quickly talk about the lab?
So you're going to open up the exam for everybody to take over? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, sure will. Okay. I'm gonna post it on the announcements.
Thank you.
And ironically, the students who probably need that the most won't even know. They're not watching these videos. They're not checking their emails. They're not reading the announcements. So I'm going to put it out there. Hey, you can retake it. And I actually only a handful of people did it last time. But anyway, so yeah, good question. So I guess we'll move on to the lab. Lab 4 version 1 didn't work. So the link's broken. The simulator doesn't work. So nothing to talk about that. Let's talk about this one, the biome one instead. Also, by the way, I've updated it. And Nancy, you can, if you want to, later you can email me and give me your thoughts on this, or anybody who's watching this. But I updated this lab between yesterday and today. It's just really cluttered, right? So remember, this used to be like all this information about all these different biomes. And I just instead did this instead. So now you can click it and then there's all that information, right? So I still want them to read that and have that information, but I just thought it'd be a little bit neater if I just kind of put it on another sheet. Anyway,
I think
then
that
here's
definitely, sorry.
no,
I
good.
think
No,
that
I was,
I think that definitely looks better, like, and helps. And then
yeah, it's
like
less
having the link
overwhelming.
to go to it. Yeah,
Good.
that
Yeah, good.
definitely will help.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just maybe do that to all the labs then, just to make it, less cluttered, less overwhelming. So thank you. But anyway, yeah, here's the list of the biomes. Basically, in this lab, you had to, I gave you a list of places, and then you had to predict what biome you think they were in. Here's the most common mistake that I see, and it's right here. And I mentioned it last week. I said, don't make this mistake. But you see right here, other than your location and the locations that you choose, there's only one location for each biome. So if you listed a biome more than once, that you got, I deducted points for that. And again, I highlighted it here. Therefore, everything I just said, right? One biome per location. I was trying to be very, I wasn't trying to trick you, right? So I wanted to make that very obvious. That's really the only thing people lost points for, if I remember correctly. And this, so far, I think people have done very well off the top of my head. I still have a lot to grade, but so far, I usually see this mistake. People mess this up a lot because remember last week I showed you the graph that you get this information from. And one side of the graph is for the temperature. One side is for the precipitation, and people mess that up. And so far, I don't think I've seen much of that. So good on you guys for that. That's really it. The rest of it's pretty straightforward, right? And then, then you test that's you testing your hypothesis. And again, usually what people mess up, and I don't think I've seen it, is they have to repeat their hypothesis and then say if it was correct or not. And usually people have problems historically doing that, but I don't think I've seen that much. And again, I just want to say, I know that's redundant and I do apologize, but this is the scientific method, right? So I'm really trying to drive home the scientific method. It's a science class, right? And you'd be surprised how many students they'll put down their hypothesis, because they're just trying to get it done, right? They got work to do. They're trying to get their grade. So they'll put down their hypothesis, they'll put down their data, and then that's it. They don't think about it anymore, right? They'll just answer the question, sure. But this forces them to think about it and makes them go back and make sure that they're actually addressing their hypothesis. And that's why I'm picky about it. I know it's a pain. It's a pain for me too. I have to grade these, but again, this is the scientific method. So I don't really have another way around that. Anyway, what else? And then of course a graph. So far, I've seen a few people did skip that part. So, and that's it for the lab. I will say this, as always, if you didn't get full credit, resubmit. If you don't know what you messed up, meet me online and we can talk about it, and then you can resubmit. Or if you find where you are, but want to get feedback, meet me online and I'll give you detailed feedback, and then you can get that 5% boost to your lab grade. I think that's it. That's all I have for lab 4. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, like on there where you're talking about that graph and talking about people missing it, I will tell you, I did get confused about that because I guess it's the way you have it worded up there. And I had to really think about what it was saying and keep reading it over because I almost missed the graph myself. But it's actually you make one and then another one for extra credit. But the way it sounds, it kind of sounds like it was extra credit to begin with. So I almost skipped that too.
Thank
right
you.
here.
Yeah. I'm just going to fix it right now then.
Yeah,
or
because
do
I
more.
almost skipped it thinking it was all extra credit, and then I had to really go back and think about that. So
Well,
I
I'm
still
glad you
wasn't
said that.
sure, but yeah.
Well, I think, does that look better when I do it like that?
Yeah.
So now it says, or okay, good. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. I'm
Yeah,
glad. See, I
because
love it.
yeah, because it kind of sounded like it was just extra credit at first. That's what I thought too. So I
So glad
just
we're having
went
these
on
meetings.
ahead and completed it just in case and then I had to really think about what it was saying. So yeah.
Well, thank you. That really helps. And the future students should be thankful for you too. But yeah, and also again, to reiterate, if you did make that mistake and you're watching this video, no big deal. Just go do it and resubmit it. As you know, I'm not very picky when it comes to that kind of stuff. So yeah. Anything else for the oh yeah, sorry, one more thing, and then we'll move forward. And Nancy, again, I know you read the Facebook post, so you've probably already read this, but somebody gave me a suggestion and I took it. And now there's yet another version of this lab that you can do instead. So here in this lab, I give you the location and you try to guess what biome it's in. In this version, I give you the biome. Oh, I need to fix that. Anyway, in this version, I give you the biome, and then right here, right, and then you try to guess a location that would be in that biome. So if you want to, feel free to do that one for extra credit. And then not only would you get extra credit for doing that, but you could also give me some feedback, like which version do you like more, things like that. So anyway, that's lab 4. Do you have any questions or concerns?
No.
All right. So let's talk about the upcoming module. I like this one. I feel like this one's a little bit easier for people, the discussion and the lab. So let's hope, right? Let's talk about this discussion here. First of all, you have a little video to watch that talks about this incident that happened in Denora, really bad air pollution that killed some people. And it's actually relatively close to us. So I like the fact that the textbook included that. So yeah, because again, it's kind of close to us geographically. Anyway, basically, there was some bad pollution. A lot of people died. And what I'm asking you to do is, who is to blame? And keep in mind, this is just an academic discussion, right? We're not actually saying, I don't know how to put this. It's okay if you don't want to blame anybody, but just academically to help demonstrate that you understand this relationship between the government, what the government can do and what the government cannot do, and some consequences of the government, and not just government, but the economy, things like that, right? So again, who to blame, right? So what happened is there was these factories that were putting out the smoke that caused this disaster. So it's like, all right, well, is it the owners of the factories that are to blame? Is it the workers of the factories that are to blame? Is it the managers of the factory that are to blame? Is it the government who didn't have any laws in place to prevent it? Because, if we do by duty-based ethics from the first discussion, right? But according to duty-based ethics, these people didn't do anything wrong. They didn't break any laws. So just things like that. So again, it doesn't really matter who's to blame. Like, I don't care. The point, you're using this as a way to demonstrate that you kind of understand how things work, basically. So that's it. And again, I'll remind you guys, make sure you read this, right? This is telling you where you lose points. If you just blame the weather, because as you'll see in the video, there was something called a temperature inversion. And without that, this would have never happened. But forget that. Obviously, that's the point. Obviously, the weather is to blame. But moving past that, what entity, what person, what group of people is to blame? So don't just blame the weather. You also have to come up with somebody. And this is kind of like the same thing, right? So really, you could almost lose 10 points because basically the next 5 points you could lose is for not identifying at least one person or entity that should be held responsible. And usually people don't lose points for this, but you could. So actually, I take that back. Some people, obviously, they're just doing the bare minimum. So, if someone just writes to say, after watching the video, I think the owner of the factories are to blame. Right. And then just leave it at that. Oh, you'll lose 5 points because I want you to defend your position. You can do a little bit of research to find out. And of course, again, use references for your responses. You're going to kind of argue with somebody or against them. That's all. And see here, you'll lose points for not indicating that you agree or disagree with the original post by disputing the arguments or facts that they've posted, or if you're disputing them, or adding more facts or arguments or more facts to their argument. So that's it. Pretty straightforward, right? Either go against them or don't. And I challenge you, I can't require this, but I challenge you to think outside the box. So if you support one thing in one post, I recommend not supporting it in another. Challenge yourself. Open your mind up. Even if you don't mean it, right? Even because obviously, if you're against one thing and one post, and then you're writing for it in another, that obviously doesn't work in real life. But academically, it's good for you to be able to make these arguments, and that's it. And one last time, and I should have said this earlier, but I'll remind you, please, especially at this point in the semester, if you're having issues with your discussions, meet me online. It'll take me five minutes at most. At least it's like some people are still getting zeros. So at the very least, I could say, oh, yeah, you're not going to get any credit for that because you need to do this. Or if you want to, I could even get better feedback and say, yeah, we might want to add this and subtract that. But at the very least, run it by me so I can tell you if you're going to get credit or not. Of course, again, I'm probably preaching to the choir because anybody who's watching this video is probably on top of things already. But speaking of which, the next word for attendance is choir, because I am probably preaching to the choir. So anyway, yeah, please take me up on that. Let me help you. I'm here to help you. Very few people are taking me up on that. And again, preaching the choir here, but I have some people complaining about how hard things are, but they won't let me help them. Like, they won't meet me. So I don't know what to do. Anyway, really quickly, this lab I think is very relatively easy, straightforward. So it's all about air quality. It's just going to basically, I'll just show you. You're going to read about this. Actually, I'm going to update this now that I've talked to Nancy. I'm going to make this like the last lab where I'm going to have all this information cluttering it up onto another link. But anyway, you're going to read about it. You learn about it also in the textbook. Air quality index, the AQI, just tells you how good or bad the air is. It's a number-based system. So what you're going to do is you're going to guess. You're going to compare your location to these other locations. Like, do you think the air quality is better where you are or Panama City? Do you think it's better where you are or New York City? And then why? Yeah, and that could just be something easy. Like, I think it's better here because we have a lower population, or I think it's better there because we have more industry. I don't know, whatever. And of course, you might not be familiar with all of these. So if there's the one or two where you're like, I'm just guessing, then that's fine. But I would find it hard to believe that you don't know about any of these and you just put, I'm just guessing for all of those. Like, that's kind of hard to believe. So if for some reason you are really not familiar with any of those locations, I hate to say it, but yeah, do a little research. Not necessarily like look up the air quality index, look up the number, but just, I don't know, look up the population numbers or what kind of industry they have, what kind of laws they have, stuff like that. Anyway, any questions about that portion of the lab, the hypothesis portion?
No.
All right. So once you have your hypotheses, then you're going to go to this website. Where to go? Yeah, this website right here. You put in your zip code. I happen to be in Scott Depot at the moment, so put that in there. And then I'm going to choose 2 days, right? So, whoops, that's a week. That's hourly. Here we go. So I'm just going to say arbitrarily, I'm going to do February 8th and February 9th. So on February 8th, it was 34. February 9th, it was 38. So right in here, I'm going to put, 38 and 39, and then I'm going to do the average. And to do an average, you just, in this case, since there's 2 days, you add these two together and divide it by 2. And of course, it's right here if you need help with that. And also, I'm here to help. Yeah, so make sure you do that. And also, this is important too. This is the biggest mistake people made. Tell me which date you used. Otherwise, I can't go check your data, right? If I can't go back and look, I can't check it. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to update this lab to also give students the option of either entering the date or entering a screenshot. Either way, I need to be able to check your data. Likewise, another big example or a big mistake I see is people don't put their location. So I need to know your location if I'm going to check your data. And if you don't feel like, if for some reason you just don't want me to know your location, first of all, I have access to student records. And second of all, if you're worried about it, you can lie to me. As long as you can tell me you're in Beijing, but as long as you're looking at the air quality for the area that you said you're in, then it's okay. But yeah, that's it, I think. Oh yeah, so for extra credit, if you want to, like I said, you had to do 2 dates and average it. But if you could also like highlight this, right click it, and you could insert column right as many times as you want. And if you want to do more dates, then you can get extra credit for that. Because obviously the more dates you have, the more accurate of a picture we're getting here. Let me see if I get rid of this really quickly before we move forward. While I'm fixing this, do you have any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Sometimes that website doesn't work. If it doesn't work, look up this data somewhere else. And again, I'm going to be able to need to check your work though. So if you used a different website, tell me where, or like I said previously, and I'm going to update this lab to reflect this, you could also just give me a screenshot so I can check it that way. Next. All right. So you've done your hypotheses. You've done the experiment, so to speak, right? You've collected your data. Now, again, just like we talked about with Lab 4, you're going to compare your data to your hypothesis and tell me if it was correct or not. And again, I know it's redundant. I apologize, but it's on purpose. I want you to be able to reflect on your hypothesis and tell me if it was correct or not. Redundant, yes, but very important. So yeah, make sure you do that. And let me give you this heads up. This is another common mistake I see. I'm not trying to trick you. So this is why I'm telling you now, because people make this mistake. The last two questions, it says which had the best quality and which had the worst. And this time it's also asking you, what was it? Right. So these other questions are like 2-part questions, right? Well, what was your hypothesis? Oh yeah, right. Because you're saying, was your hypothesis correct or incorrect? And then you're going to say it was better here, better there, whatever. Here you're doing that, but then you're also going to say, and it was, you know, the location with the best AQI was, I don't know, Atlanta, and the AQI was 2, whatever it may be. So make sure you don't mess that up. Then you'll again do a graph, as always. I'm actually going to change this. So you, if you're watching this, you've got a little advantage because I'm going to take this part out where it says make a bar graph. Part of what I want to know, what I want the students to know is what kind of graph to make. And since we have discrete data, like this location versus that location, it should be a bar graph, and students should be able to know that. So yeah, I'm going to delete that. But you know, because you're watching this video. As always with bar graphs, the bar in this course, the bar should be going up and down, not side to side. Make sure you give it a title that makes sense, that describes the data. So don't label your graph AQI lab, right? Make sure it makes sense. If you forget how to make a lab, you can do this, right? You can do that. Also, I'm going to update this again too. You could also do an extra credit graph if you want. So yeah, you could do a bar graph, which is what I'm requiring. But if you want to, and you do more than 2 days worth of data, you could pick one location and do a line graph that shows how the AQI has changed from day to day. Like, I don't know, however many days you want to do it, but I hope that makes sense. Like a line graph, if you choose one location, you could have a line graph. Like on this day, it was this day it was this day was this. Or obviously you could do multiple locations, but if you're doing it by date, right, on your x-axis, if you have the different dates, then a line graph would work. But in this particular situation, it wouldn't be much of a line graph because you don't have one date or 2 dates, right? So you'd have like one little line, which is why you should do a bar graph and put in the AQI average for your bar graph. But again, if you want to have more dates, then you can do a line graph for extra credit. I think that's all I have. Oh, again, I'll remind everybody, make sure you save it as a PDF before you upload it. I've been saying that all semester. People are still messing that up. And this is the graph, or excuse me, this is the lab where this is the most important, because for some reason, I don't know why, but when people upload this lab for some reason, if it's not a PDF, it really, really cuts off a lot of the questions in the graph. So then obviously I can't see it, which means I can't grade it, which means it'll be a point deduction. So yeah, there's that. And finally, really quickly, I'll remind you, just like I did with the discussions, you don't have to do this alone. We can meet online and I can walk you through every single step as if we were doing a lab together, or you can have me look it over before you turn it in, right? Whether it be very quickly, like, oh, you won't get any credit. Don't forget this. You have to do this to get any credit, or I can get in more detail and really tell you how to improve your score. And finally, as always, with everything else, like I've been saying, you can meet me after you've done it and after it's been graded if you want to get feedback and a 5% boost to your grade. So I think that's all I have for the lab. Actually, I guess that's all I have for Module 5. So any questions about anything?
Nope. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. I guess the
All right.
last
Have a good day.
Thank you too. The last word for attendance, and it doesn't matter for Nancy because she was here, but for the video, the last word for attendance will be microphone.